My parents looked at me across the table and said, "You and your kid aren't important here." My sister said, "Yeah, your money isn't special either." I just lowered my eyes and stayed silent, smiling. That night, I quietly did things they never expected. I don't think I'll ever forget the exact way my mother's fork tapped against her plate when she said it. It was slow, casual, like she was commenting on the weather, but what she actually said sliced through the noise of the room like a blade. "You and your kid aren't important here." No one gasped, no one paused, no one defended me. My dad didn't even look up. He just reached for the gravy and mumbled something like, "She's right." My sister, who was already halfway through her second glass of wine, smirked and said, "Yeah, your money isn't special either." I didn't say a word. I just smiled and lowered my eyes, pretending to be interested in the mashed potatoes on my plate that I hadn't touched. No one noticed I hadn't eaten anything all night. There were 14 people at that table. Every single one of them had been helped by me in the last year. Not in small ways either. Rent, car repairs, job referrals, medical bills. They'd all been scooped up by me at one point or another, no questions asked. I never made a big deal about it. I just quietly handled things because I could. I've had a successful consulting business for almost 8 years. Things took off in the last 3. Once I bought the house I grew up in, after my parents said they were too old to handle a mortgage, I thought things would get easier for all of us. I thought maybe they'd see what I was doing and just appreciate it. But appreciation turned into entitlement fast, and then entitlement turned into expectation. That Thanksgiving, it hit me hard that I wasn't family anymore. I was a resource, a provider, a wallet with legs. My sister had moved back in with my parents after her second divorce. She hadn't worked in 18 months. Still managed to get lip fillers and new boots every time I turned around, though. My dad had apparently developed a taste for cigars and luxury recliners, even though he hadn't worked in almost a decade. My mom, I don't even know what she did with the money I sent her. Probably used it to host card nights with the other retired wives in the neighborhood she would have lost without me. And when I finally said no to the new car lease, no to the ridiculous recliner, no to another random emergency dental fund, they turned silent, condescending. But still, I hosted Thanksgiving. My son deserved one good memory at least. I figured I could handle a few awkward conversations, maybe a side comment or two. What I didn't expect was the full-on ambush, the public rejection, the dismissal. In my own house, with food I paid for, drinks I ordered, candles I lit. When it was finally over and everyone left, I tucked my son into bed and came downstairs alone. The dishes were already cleaned. I paid my housekeeper double to stay late because I knew I wouldn't be able to face the mess on top of everything else. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop. First, I canceled my sister's cell phone line. She'd forgotten she was still on my family plan. Then I logged into the utility accounts for the house my parents lived in. The house I technically owned in my name. Water, gas, electric, internet, all switched to limited plans. I didn't even feel guilty. That was just the beginning. They had no idea what was coming. By the time they realized what was happening, I was already 3 steps ahead. The first text came from my sister. It was just a string of question marks followed by, "Why is my phone not working?" I didn't answer. I watched the typing bubble pop up, disappear, come back again, then vanish for good. The next morning, my dad called me from the landline. That one still worked for now. He didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't ask if anything was wrong. He just said the internet was down and the thermostat was acting weird. It was late November. Cold had already settled in. I told him to call the utility company. Then I hung up. 2 hours later, I got a call from the property manager. That was part of what they never realized. I never just gave them the house. I bought it under an LLC with my name on every document. I let them live there rent-free, paid every bill, covered every repair. They'd gotten so used to it, they thought it belonged to them. It didn't. So, I called in the favor I'd been holding on to for years. I asked the property manager to begin preparing the house for a new tenant. Nothing fast, no eviction notices or anything ugly, just quiet steps, notices of inspection, notices of reappraisal. Let the pressure start to build. The week after Thanksgiving, I blocked my sister on everything: phone, text, social media. She posted something vague on Facebook about betrayal, about how some people only help so they can take it all away. A few mutuals liked it. I didn't care. My mom sent a Christmas card in the mail. No message, no photo of the family, just a single line in her handwriting. "We hope you come to your senses." It arrived the same day I removed their access to my Amazon Prime account. For years, they used it like it was their own personal concierge. Cleaning supplies, toiletries, random garbage at 2 a.m. I used to joke about it. Not anymore. I could feel it shifting fully, quietly. They hadn't felt the full hit yet, but the cracks were forming. They were used to comfort, to convenience, to unlimited favors, but now things were clicking off one by one. And I hadn't even touched the bank accounts yet. See, they never knew how much I really controlled because I never made a scene about it. I didn't brag. I just solved things, paid off balances, set up auto pay for their insurance, sent quiet money transfers when they hinted hard enough. That was about to end, too. I had meetings lined up with my accountant. The auto payments were scheduled to expire in less than 2 weeks. I wanted everything off my books before the new year. And while I knew they'd scream, send guilt-laced texts, maybe even try to show up at my house, I also knew something else. They weren't used to fending for themselves anymore. They'd forgotten how. The funny thing is, I hadn't even planned on revenge. Not at first. But once they made it clear I wasn't family to them unless I was paying for everything, once they looked at me across that table and told me I didn't matter, something clicked. They thought they could embarrass me, and I'd keep writing checks. They didn't know me at all. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my sister showed up at my office. I work in a secured building downtown. Glass elevators, key card access, concierge at the front desk. Not the kind of place you just stroll into, but she'd waited outside, standing in the cold in a coat that looked more expensive than her car. She waved through the glass like this was some casual pop-in. I could have ignored her. I should have. But part of me wanted to hear what she'd say. She didn't waste time. She wanted to know why her phone didn't work, why she couldn't access the gas bill portal, why Mom and Dad were freaking out about the real estate guy who was asking questions about the house. Then she said it. "You're making a scene, Carol. This is embarrassing." That was the moment I realized just how delusional they all were. I hadn't even raised my voice. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't made a single public move. But in their world, the absence of support was an act of aggression. Me pulling away silently was worse than any outburst because they couldn't spin it. They couldn't twist it into drama if there was nothing to fight against. I told her it was done. All of it. No more bills, no more extras, no more phone plans, no more lifelines. She rolled her eyes and said, "Fine, you'll come crawling back. You always do." She left just as casually as she arrived, like she thought she'd won something. But I wasn't crawling anywhere. That night, I removed the last link. I had still been paying my parents' health insurance premiums. Expensive ones, too, because my dad had pre-existing conditions and my mom refused anything with a high deductible. It was the one thing I'd been holding off on. Not anymore. They had until the end of the month, then they'd be on their own. I even included a typed letter. Polite, final. I mailed it the next day. By Christmas Eve, I got the call I knew was coming. It was my mom. Her voice was flat, like she was reading off a script she didn't believe in. She said they forgave me, that this family doesn't give up on each other, that everyone makes mistakes, and they were willing to move past this. I didn't answer. I just listened. Then she asked if I'd be coming over for Christmas dinner, said they'd already bought a small ham just in case. I told her we had other plans, and that was it. We spent Christmas in a cabin I rented upstate, just me and my son. Firewood, hot cocoa, snow falling outside the windows. No drama, no guilt, no fake smiles over ham and wine I paid for. It was the first peaceful Christmas I'd had since before I made my first 6 figures. And while my son slept that night, curled up in flannel sheets with a half-eaten candy cane in his hand, I sat by the fire and realized something important. They were still waiting for the storm, for the moment when I'd crack and come running back to make it all better. But what they didn't understand was this was the storm, and I was just getting started. January hit hard for them anyway. The temperature dropped below freezing during the second week. I knew because my sister posted about it on her Instagram story, along with a blurry shot of the thermostat flashing an error code. Something about the furnace acting up. I could tell she didn't want to ask for help directly, but she was baiting for it. Just vague enough to invite sympathy, just pitiful enough to make someone feel responsible. Not me. That week, I got a call from the HOA connected to the neighborhood my parents lived in. Apparently, their driveway hadn't been shoveled, and the garbage bins had been sitting out for 5 days. They wanted to issue a fine to the property owner. I told them to go ahead. It felt strange at first, being this detached. I'd spent years jumping at every minor inconvenience they faced. I used to send grocery deliveries if there was a snowstorm. I used to Venmo money for medicine without them even asking. I used to handle everything. Now I was watching their mess pile up, and I wasn't even flinching. Then something happened I didn't expect. My accountant flagged a strange payment from one of my personal accounts, a wire transfer to a rental furniture company in my name. 10 grand. I thought it was a mistake until I called the company and got the address the furniture had been delivered to. It was my parents' house. New couches, a giant TV, decorative shelves. I was stunned. I didn't remember signing off on anything. But then I remembered 3 years ago during one of my mom's emergency renovations. I'd given her limited access to a secondary card on my account, strictly for materials and contractor fees. I'd forgotten to cancel it. They'd never used it since, until now. They'd gone and ordered everything they wanted for their new year, new living room setup, assuming I'd either not notice or just accept it. That's when something clicked inside me, something final. It wasn't just entitlement, it was theft. So I did what they never expected. I scheduled a full pickup and repossession with the furniture company, told them the card had been used fraudulently. They were understanding. Apparently, this kind of thing happens more than people think. The items were marked for pickup within 72 hours. Then I called the insurance company. I'd been paying the homeowner's policy on the house. It included contents, meaning everything inside was technically protected under my name. I removed that policy and submitted a transfer of ownership paperwork to begin the eviction process. Not for some random tenant, for my own parents. They'd lived in that house for free for almost 4 years. I'd paid off the mortgage, the maintenance, the insurance, the landscaping. But now they had 60 days to vacate. I didn't post about it. I didn't call to warn them. I let the paperwork arrive in the mailbox like a ghost they never thought was real. That weekend, my sister sent one last text. I hope it's worth it. I didn't answer, but I whispered it to myself when I saw the eviction letter marked delivered. It already is. They tried to play it cool at first. My mom posted a photo of her and my dad having coffee on the back porch, captioned, "Starting the year with gratitude and love." A few of their church friends commented with hearts and praying hands. My sister didn't post anything at all, which was unusual. She always had something to say, even if it was a filtered selfie pretending to be spontaneous. But then the messages started coming in sideways. A cousin I hadn't talked to in months reached out, just checking in, said my mom had mentioned I was going through a phase and they were concerned. I didn't even respond. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the sheriff's department. Not because I was in trouble, but because my parents had called to report the repossession truck as a theft. The officers were polite, confused, even a little embarrassed once they realized it was all legal. I had the receipts, the ownership paperwork, and a very patient lawyer on standby. They apologized for the inconvenience and said the report would be closed with no further action. Still, I could picture the scene. My parents standing in their driveway, acting like victims, while men hauled away the couch they picked out without asking. My sister probably filming from the porch, trying to turn it into some inspirational meltdown video about betrayal and family loyalty. They didn't expect it to actually escalate. They thought I'd fold before it got serious. Then the water got cut off. That was the one I kept going longer than I should have. I guess a part of me still couldn't stand the idea of them not having basic things. But when I saw the overdue balance and the past 4 notices they'd ignored, I realized they were waiting, hoping I'd still be monitoring everything quietly from behind the scenes. I wasn't. They went to stay at a friend's house for a while, someone they knew from church. I only found out because the friend's daughter messaged me and asked what was going on. I told her the truth. Everything they had was paid for by me. They took advantage of it, and I stopped. She didn't reply. But a week later, I heard my parents had to leave the friend's house too. Apparently, my sister got into it with the friend's husband over using their car without asking. And just like that, their world started to shrink. No house, no utilities, no couch, no car, no cushion. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My business was doing better than ever. I had signed a new client contract, hired an assistant, and finally booked that trip to Oregon my son had been asking for. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't even feel conflicted. They wanted me to feel like I'd destroyed a family. But I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped fixing what they kept breaking, and I was finally starting to see what my life looked like when I wasn't carrying everyone else's. March rolled in cold and gray, but I didn't mind. There was something strangely peaceful about it. The way the cold kept people indoors. The quiet mornings with no calls, no requests, no emergencies I had to solve before my coffee. They stopped trying to reach me completely by the second week. No texts, no calls from blocked numbers, no fake apologies, just silence. I didn't realize how much noise they added to my life until it was gone. The fake crises, the manipulations disguised as conversations, the guilt wrapped in gratitude. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. And what I thought was, I don't miss them, not even a little. They weren't homeless, not yet. They had options. My mom had a sister out in Ohio. My dad still had his pension if he ever bothered to manage it properly. My sister could have gotten a job like the rest of us. But they wouldn't. That was never how they operated. They were too proud to admit they needed help too. Word got around the extended family. Some of the aunts and uncles reached out cautiously, politely. They'd heard rumors, wanted to hear my side. I gave them the truth, plain and simple. I paid for everything. They took advantage. I stopped. Some backed off, others nodded silently on the phone. One uncle said he respected it. That was the closest thing I got to support. By April, I heard they were living in a cheap rental on the edge of town. No lawn, no backyard, no Sunday brunches with friends. My sister had taken a part-time job at a vape shop. My dad started doing deliveries for a pharmacy. My mom still hadn't spoken to me since Christmas. And me? I was doing better than ever. My son was thriving. His grades were up. He smiled more. And he stopped asking when we'd see Grandma and Grandpa again. I think he felt it too, the peace. I redid the guest room, not because I needed one, but because I could. It used to be where they stayed when they came over, always uninvited, always leaving it messy. Now it's a reading room, plants in the windows, a wall of books, a new beginning. And no, I don't care that they hate me now. I really don't. They had it too good for too long. I gave everything I could, money, time, energy, and they burned through it like it was nothing. The moment I stopped saying yes, they showed me exactly who they were. So I smiled at that Thanksgiving table. I stayed quiet while they tried to humiliate me, and then, quietly, I took everything back. And I've never felt more free.